Hello, and welcome back to Round the Table. My name's Ben John. It's a joy to be with you again today. Delighted to be joined by Tim Dieppe and Andrea Williams. Hi, Tim. Hi, Andrea.
Hi.
Great to have you both. Always a joy to speak with you each week, and a joy to have everyone tuning in. Do post in the comments where you're from. Post any questions and comments. It's always great to hear from you as you join us here at Round the Table. Great issues that we need to be talking about today. Some alarming issues as well. Just this week, we heard about Harmony London, who was told you can't sing church songs outside of church. Andrea, tell us a bit about that.
You can't sing church songs outside of a church. A special officer, not a commissioned officer, comes up to the amazing, beautiful, wonderful Harmony London. And she is to be found on Oxford Street several times a week, playing amazing worship songs. Crowds gather around her, and she makes this absolutely wonderful sound praising the Lord. And I think that this video went viral this week of this police officer literally poking out her tongue at Harmony, forcing her to shut down. And there were several other officers with her. And in fact, Harmony did pack up and leave. But that video has gone viral. The police have actually apologized. But it's quite something, isn't it, when police officers or people that are in that role patrolling the streets move people off because they are singing worship songs. And that's what happened this week. I think we've got a clip of that. But before we move to it, just before we move to it, I want to say this. Interestingly, this morning, I was in a cab because I was on a meeting, and I was talking about this case, about Harmony London on this meeting in a general way. And the cab driver, as I got to leave the cab driver, he says, "You know what I do every time I pass her? I put down my window so that I can hear her. She blesses me." He said, "Sometimes I even make sure if I'm on the phone to someone that I put the window down so that they can hear her." Of course, he's on his headset. So this was the officer. This was the cab driver. He heard me talking about her because this is the impact. And I want to say that before she was well known, because she's now really well known, she's got an Instagram handle, Harmony London. Go and follow her. Let's give her more streams and more followers. And she's going to have an album soon. But before she was viral, I was there. You know, I'm always on Oxford Street, and I heard her singing "Goodness of God," and I stopped. I thought that sound is so beautiful. It was the goodness of God, and I joined in, and it was so joyful. And I was captured on one of her little Instagram reels, and that was so wonderful. That was several years ago, just when she started, and of course, since then, all kinds of people were there. And let me say this, something else that's quite funny is that because it's literally my commute route, and I was there when Romeo Beckham and his girlfriend, I think she's called Mila, I think, anyway, Romeo Beckham was there, and I was there as well. But Romeo was listening and joining in with Harmony. And so this is the point. She draws people because it's beautiful. She makes a glorious sound. 10 meters down the road, you've got
She's got a fantastic voice, hasn't she, Andrea? She's got
amazing
a really
voice.
fantastic voice.
She's got amazing voice.
Listen to it. I noticed her top clip on YouTube's got 4 million views. Just playing the goodness of God. You know, she's just got a great voice. There she is.
Oh, there she is.
I think we've got a clip of the police officer. Do you want to play that, folks?
Religion you're allowed to do anywhere.
No, miss, you're not allowed to sing songs.
church songs outside of church grounds, by the way.
You're not allowed to sing church songs outside
of church songs or church
you're not allowed
grounds. That's fine. That's
you're
fine.
not allowed. She just said you're not allowed to sing church songs outside of church.
Outside of church grounds, unless you have unless
That's
you've been
a load of
authorized by the church to do this
Yes.
kind of songs.
Yeah, it's not saying anything anymore. Thank
Are you saying that you don't care about the Human Rights Act? You're lost. Religion you're allowed.
So that clip went absolutely viral and also got reported on various media channels and news channels. It's if you look it up, you Google her, Heavenly Heart in London, you can see lots and lots of reports about that because everyone was shocked that this officer would say you can't sing church songs outside of church. I mean, that's the ridiculous thing. And then of course she stuck her tongue out as well. So I believe they have apologized now, but I mean it is an extraordinary incident, and the fact that somebody who carries the authority of the law would say that, would even claim you can't sing church songs outside of church. What happens to carol singing then? That's illegal according to her. I mean,
I guess that it does expose a problem. I mean, we can be thankful that they've apologized, but as you say, Tim, it really does expose the fact that it happened in the first place. Clearly shows there is a problem in terms of.
Well, that's why our work
training.
is so important. That's why our work is so important. That's why we thank God that we've got 100% success rate on our street preacher cases. And not just the ones that have come to court, sometimes been found guilty and then gone up to higher courts where we've got them vindicated, got them off at a higher court because these rules of free speech are so important. But it's really, really important that we've stood all these years and kept the streets open for the preaching of the gospel. And I really believe that as a result of the work of Christian Concern, that is one of the things that we've done, because we keep on repeating that people are free to preach the gospel. People are free to sing Christian songs on the street. We are free to do.
It's very striking, isn't it? That the officer singles out church songs. I mean, she doesn't say you can't sing any old song, you can't sing a song. It's church songs in particular. She says you have to sing church songs in a church. I mean, it's laughable because it's honestly so silly. But that reveals something about the attitude of this officer. I mean, one wonders. All right,
it's actually quite sad.
What do they do when there's massive Muslim protests chanting, from the river to the sea and all this stuff, or even chanting jihad or stuff, and so on? What do they do then? Not very much, right? But somebody singing a church song that may have just pricked her conscience. I mean, you don't know. I mean, that could be what actually happened here. And that's what she's upset about.
I think we need to pray for. I think we need to pray for her actually, because I think that you see in that really disproportionate response and the look in her face. We know. I think that there we just cry out for the soul of that lady, and we need to love her, and we need to cry out for her soul that she would come to know Jesus. But I also think that just generally what Harmony is bringing is this joy and this hope of Christ. And I think it's really important, and again what our cases have done and what the work of Christian Concern and the Christian Legal Centre has done over many years is this: we've said to the police there are rules about how you police. There are rules with regard to street preaching. You need to uphold people's freedom to speak, to express faith on the streets. And they need to be trained to do so. And here what you clearly have is a situation whereby they hadn't been properly trained,
Yeah. Well, Jenny Hornet's got some helpful comments here. Abuse of policing, I think, not meant to have personal opinions. And she goes on, nor are the police meant to be political, but impartial. Interesting comment here, Tim. Would be great to hear your perspective. Rainey Gibbs writes, "You aren't the victim. You're pushing your personal religious beliefs on others. Leave people alone." So should we just leave people alone? How do you respond to Rainey?
The police officer left her alone. I mean, yes, I agree. Leave her alone. I mean, that's actually what should have happened. She should have been left alone. And she wasn't hurting anybody, and she wasn't putting her beliefs on anybody either. People are free to walk past. Many people enjoy it and are blessed by it. But she should have been left alone. And yes, I agree with the principle there. Yes, providing they're doing nothing harmful, yes, leave people alone. I agree.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think sometimes we forget that not everyone is compelled to listen. You can walk on, and the kind of culture of offence is.
You quite often have the
wrong.
Buddhists singing and chanting their stuff down there after circus as well. Don't you? The police never stop them. You quite often have that Buddhist chanting going on around there and stuff, and various other people. So it's very odd that this Harmony was singled out by this police officer, and she mentioned church songs, as if Buddhist chants and other things would be totally fine. I mean, that's just very strange.
No, absolutely. Well, we continue to support Harmony. We hope and pray that this doesn't happen again. And maybe it's because you never know whether this kind of stuff happens elsewhere in the country, but it isn't caught on tape, or people don't know about Christian Concern, or they don't know, and it doesn't get exposed. We can be thankful that this particular incident was caught and has raised this up. So we're thankful for that.
Yeah, and
apology.
I just want to say in relation to that, Tim, I think in many of our cases, what doesn't get caught is those moments on camera. So imagine that moment being described by Harmony. Could we have pictured the face? Could we have pictured how disproportionate it was? And I think that quite often we get these situations that come into our office, and where this kind of stuff isn't caught. I mean, increasingly because of our mobile devices, things are caught, but that is a good thing in many ways, because we need to see what's happening in order to lovingly push back, because the gospel is love and truth, the gospel is hope, the gospel is freedom, the gospel is forgiveness. The gospel is Jesus. Jesus died for every single one of us. He died, and this is why we exist. And when you see those horrible, that horrible response, the response is Jesus loves you. Jesus died for you on the cross. Come to him and be happy. Be happy. Be restored. Find who you are in him.
Well, let's hope and pray that the officer comes to know the Lord.
Yes.
We know that God is in the business of opening people's eyes, and let's hope and pray that through Harmony's continued witness and singing, that people come and hear of the goodness of God. So yesterday, Christian preacher Stephen Crean was found guilty of breaching a public spaces protection order for holding a sign with a verse from the Bible on it outside of an abortion clinic. He's been prosecuted, found guilty by Ealing Council under the Anti-Social Behaviour Crime and Policing Act for holding, just to clarify, one sign, one verse outside an abortion clinic at Mary Stopes International Reproductive Choices in West London. This legislation prohibits any act of disapproval of abortion within the buffer zone. And he was holding up Psalm 139, verse 13. For thou hast possessed my reins, thou hast covered me in my mother's womb. Handing down the judgment, the judge actually said, the extract of the psalm mentioning my mother's womb was an act of protest of abortion. There were less controversial verses you could have chosen to display. I can come to no other conclusion that the verse was an act of disapproval of abortion services, an act prohibited by the protection spaces, the public spaces protection order. And so what's happened here is a preacher's been found guilty for holding up a verse in a buffer zone, not being violent, not harassing, not shouting or anything like that, for holding a sign with the verse. He's been given a conditional discharge, but has been ordered to pay legal costs. But out of principle, he feels in good conscience he would be unable to pay it. We at the Christian Concern, Christian Legal Centre, are standing with him and will be supporting him as he appeals this extraordinary case. It really is extraordinary. I think sometimes it's easy to just forget what's actually happened. A man, a sign, one verse guilty.
I mean, this psalm, probably after Psalm 23, is the most well-known psalm in the Bible, and it's beautiful, isn't it? He was standing silently holding up the sign for you in the NIV version. He had the King James version. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I mean, the psalm, this psalm again, a little bit like Harmony's goodness of God, is you've searched me, Lord, you know me. I mean, when I sit and when I rise, you perceive my thoughts from afar. Again, this message is gloriously beautiful and good news. And the idea, and he's been criminalized for it.
So we think this is the first time, don't we, that somebody's been actually convicted of a criminal offence for displaying a Bible verse for maybe hundreds of years. I mean, maybe even 400 or 500 years. A really, really long time. And this shows just how far the nation has gone in terms of turning away from God, turning away from the Bible, turning away from God's laws and things, that we've reached a position where the nation and the judges think that it's right and reasonable and a good, fair, just thing to do is to criminalize somebody for displaying a Bible verse on the streets. I mean, that's kind of an extraordinary thing that you're going to, and obviously we are going to appeal it, and appeal it on the basis of human rights breach and all that kind of thing. I think we've got an image to show of him. There we are. So there's some various protesters and individuals outside the court where he was sentenced, holding up a sign similar to the one that he held up outside the abortion clinic there. So you can see that's just where he's just stood there holding that sign up. And for that,
I think also remember, Tim, here we've got a situation whereby there are places, as we know now, there are places in England where you cannot go to pray, where you cannot hold it. So, and they happen to be outside. Legislation is being used. They have to essentially no-go zones for the gospel.
Yeah.
You are being protected from the hope.
Places where it's illegal to pray, illegal to talk about abortion, illegal to display at least certain Bible verses.
Yes. You can't sing on Oxford Street. You can't sing a Christian song outside a Christian church. But that's why we have to contend that. Because it's why we've had to contend all the street preaching cases. Now the truth is the street preaching cases have been won, but where it's gone next is by these antisocial behaviour policies.
Yes,
and it's almost like through the back door, not through parliamentary primary legislation, but through the back door. You're seeing through local policies. You're seeing these sorts of things implemented.
I think sometimes it's often it's hard to speak in counterfactuals, but I guess claiming that it's only because it was that particular verse, and actually we've seen the kind of arrests that have happened. There's been other videos that have happened of things going on in buffer zones, and you wonder whether really that they've just tried to find a way just to make him guilty. We don't know. But it's the big push that there's been these last few years.
Of course, the other thing, Ben, is that the police officer claimed it was an emergency, did they not? I mean, they were called as it was and told it's an emergency. This chap is here outside Washington displaying a verse of the Bible. Emergency, quick! Get there quick. He needs to be dealt with. And then we read about all these robberies that aren't being investigated, all these muggings that aren't being investigated, all of these actual crimes, all of compare it with Muslim protesters chanting anti-Semitic slogans, and displaying properly offensive signs, in public and so on. Is that treated as an emergency? Are those people arrested and prosecuted? No, not as far as we can tell. Not as far as it sees. So again, it's kind of a double standard, extraordinary double standard. It's like, this person here, let's get him, and all this effort of the police is used to prosecute a Christian for displaying a Bible verse, and all of these other proper offences are blind eye, not going to do anything, bend the knee, let's not object to these kind of things and so on. And so there does seem to be a double standard going on here in policing, and I think it's a real serious concern.
And so he was given legal costs, and I think he was also given part of the costs as well was a victim surcharge. But it came out in court that on the day that he was there weren't any women. No one went. So who are the victims? Who's the victim of his crime? He paid
but also
legal costs. He's paying a victim surcharge.
Anyway, the women wouldn't be victims either, would they? Because actually, this is actually the point. That this is, we've become a society whereby there are messages that cannot be taught, cannot be spoken. Now, it is quite something when the message that cannot be spoken is, you are beautifully and wonderfully and fearfully made. You're made in the image of God. He knows you. He knows when you sit. He knows when you rise. You were knit together in your mother's womb. This is the unannounceable. This is the stuff that must be prohibited. No. And I think that here, Alexandra, here in the comments is saying that it's believed that the last time something like this happened in this country was in 1670 when the Quakers, William Penn and William Mead, were arrested and put on trial for a silent religious act. And this is it. This is a silent religious act, like the silent prayer. And again, how we understand this, a little bit like how we understand from that arrest from Harmony, drawing these things together, is you can understand it only in the spiritual realm in many ways, that people would be so offended by this verse that they call the police. When the workers within the abortion unit, where sadly lives are being taken, are so offended. Why? Because of conscience.
Yeah, we're living in an upside down age where, to warn mothers the harm that they're doing, about the reality of the child that's in their womb, to tell them about what could happen to them, and there's going to be many, many women hurting and broken because no one told them, no one warned them about what they were about to do. And actually the kind, as you said, Andrea, the loving, the compassionate thing is to say, you don't have to do this.
That's
what you're doing is wrong. And there is a better way. However stressful, however unplanned it may be, we know that we worship a God who's sovereign, whose plan is perfect, and who welcomes all, whatever they've done, and so we can point towards him and the hope, the forgiveness that we have in him. It's been great to see some of these comments coming in. Lady Gozen, so grateful for all you do at Christian Concern in raising our awareness and supporting those sharing love through the gospel. William, Cuthbert, all say for Christians have freedom of speech, pretty telling and pretty prophetic. And Charmaine Hard has a great comment. Considering that God made the heavens and earth, these buffer zones where we cannot speak anything from God is so offensive. Indeed, despite what the council might say, it is all the Lord's land. So we need to keep pushing on, trying to be faithful, and we're going to keep supporting Stephen Green. We're appealing this decision, supporting him, and encouraging more Christians.
A massive shout out to Michael Phillips. I mean, I really want to, commend and appreciate Michael Phillips in our on the Christian Legal Centre team for the tireless work that he has done over so many years on street preacher cases. And he's in a case even now as we record, he's in another case day in, day out, contending for freedom. So thank you to Michael. Thank you to the Christian Legal Centre team at large. You are amazing and wonderful people.
No, they really, really are. Tim, also recently we've been hearing about parents that have written to the Archbishop about valuing all God's children. Tell us about that.
Thanks, Ben. Well, valuing all God's children is the Church of England's guidance for its schools. I think it's 4,000 something schools on bullying of various forms. And it's become notorious because it has been actually used in court against Christians, faithful Christians, for their beliefs when they've been objecting to LGBT ideology. And it actually does introduce the idea of trans pupils multiple times in the guidance, and talks about allowing pupils to dress in the opposite sex and various things. And what prompted this letter, Nigel and Sally Rowe originally sort of highlighted this issue back in 2017 when a 6-year-old was allowed to cross-dress and cross-identify in their son's primary school. And they complained to the school, and the school actually dismissed their complaints and said they're being transphobic, and they complained to the diocese, and eventually they complained to the government that they should intervene about this, and the government eventually settled with them and said they would bring out new guidance. And this guidance has taken a long time coming, but it did come out just in December last year, and it's actually very strong, good guidance. I mean, we could improve it, but it's definitely very strong. It says that gender ideology is a contested belief. It says we will not use the term transgender to describe children because under UK law, I'm quoting now, under UK law, children cannot obtain a gender recognition certificate and therefore cannot change their legal sex. And it says that a child who is gender questioning should, in general, be held to the same uniform standards as other children of their sex at school, and schools may set clear rules to this effect. So, in other words, the government has come out with much stronger guidance than the Church of England has. The Church of England's guidance has been allowing 6-year-olds and even younger children to cross-dress and socially transition, and has been used to criticise and cause Christians to lose their jobs for objecting to this kind of thing. And so Nigel and Sally Rowe wrote to the Archbishop of Canterbury, again, actually, they've written to him before, prompted by this new guidance, to say, surely now it's time to scrap this valuing all God's children guidance. Let's get rid of it. And the case was highlighted even more, actually, as it turns out, by another case of a 4-year-old who started school. He's actually a boy, and he started school in a Church of England primary school as a girl. And the Church of England primary school allowed this, and valuing all God's children was their justification for this. And there's an article in the Telegraph over the weekend that the girls in the school are traumatized by this. They're devastated. Some of them are like hiding under tables, not talking. They've been lied to. They've befriended somebody who they thought was a girl who's actually a boy. Somebody who actually also exposed himself to them and talked about dark secrets of him really being a girl, or her really being a girl, whichever way, or really being a boy. I mean, I'm confusing myself. Anyway, and this also embarrassed the Church of England about this guidance. So anyway, they wrote to the Archbishop of Canterbury about this. Isn't it shocking, though, that the Church of England guidance is so bad? I mean, it is allowing 4-year-olds and encouraging schools to allow children to lie about who they are to their fellow pupils, and actually allowing teachers or encouraging teachers to lie about who a pupil is, and to cause significant trauma and disturb and upsetness in very, very young pupils who should not have to worry about whether their girlfriend is really a girl or not, and whether these people who they're meant to trust are lying to them about who this person is or not. It's very traumatizing and very damaging. And the thing is that the Church of England has written back. They now said, Nigel Genders, aptly named, who is the Church of England's education person, wrote back on behalf of the Archbishop of Canterbury and said they are working on revising it in the light of the new guidance. Well, let's see how that is. But how did we ever get into a position where the Church of England is got awful guidance that needs to be revised in the light of the government? The Church of England should be holding out the truth and upholding the truth. And I think they're very embarrassed by this. And I think they should withdraw it now and then bring out new guidance. And they're allowing this guidance to carry on, which means more 4-year-olds, more 5-year-olds, more 6-year-olds, more of people using it against Christians in court and against Christians in the school classrooms and in the school staff boards and so on. They should withdraw it straight away, because it is actually being used to justify harm of children. And they know this. They're aware of it. It's been in the press. It's been everywhere. They've had letters written. They are not, they're not like, oh, we didn't know. They can never claim in history, we didn't know this was happening. They know this is happening. And they are absolutely guilty, and they should absolutely remove it today.
Nigel and Sally's case, Tim, started in 2015. 2015. The first was when the first child in that school.
First 6-year-old. Yeah, right. Yeah.
So and then when we think that's nearly a decade.
Mm.
And that's very serious in terms of the impact on our children, isn't it?
Mm. Yeah.
It's well,
this Valuing World's Children, I think the first edition came out in 2014. Then it was updated in 2017, updated again in 2019. But yes, that has been around for 10 years now, this Valuing World's Children.
And the cases, and then the parents that sought to challenge it, it was brought to the Church of England's attention.
Yep.
And instead, they were labelled transphobic unless they could accept a child's acquired gender or a gender that they were acquiring or social transition. And for challenging that, their name was dragged through the mud. John Parker, a governor, for challenging the fact that mermaids, now discredited, was coming into a school as a Church of England minister in a Church of England school, sitting on the governing body. He was vilified by the now Archbishop of York, Stephen Cottrell. He, along with various others around that time as well, who are challenging some of Stephen Cottrell's statements. This is not absolutely just about the guidance in schools, but Stephen Cottrell, the Archbishop of York, was essentially saying, "Get with the program, guys." We've got, I mean, this is the leadership that we have. Nigel Genders in the Department of Education heading that up. We have been to see him once. He has been warned, but in the early days, he won't. It's difficult to get access to him now. The truth is that people are writing to him all the time, and to the Archbishop of Canterbury. Questions are being asked on the floor of synod.
And the Archbishop of Canterbury wrote the foreword to this guidance. He knows exactly what it says. He knows and he's had these letters. He knows exactly what the issues are with it, and he's saying, no, it's okay. We'll leave it as it is. It's fine. We'll revise it eventually when the government new guidance comes out. But let's fine to just leave it as it is. They are absolutely guilty, and they'll be judged by history. There's no question.
I think one of the really sad things is it's just the failure of leadership that they're just following whatever the state says, whatever the government says.
No
sense of vision.
No, they're not. They're worse than that. They're actually setting a standard worse than the government. They're actually saying we should allow children to socially transition when the government is saying they should not.
But I'm more saying in the sense that the Church of England doesn't seem to have a vision. They've said all this awful guidance, and now the government is saying this. Maybe we're going to revise our own guidance. There's no sense of
having a vision. Ben,
there's no vision. There's no vision. There's no vision.
Yeah, children, you are made in the image of God. Genesis 1. Children, you were knit together in your mother's womb. Psalm 139.
Children, you are boys and girls.
Children,
that is how you are, and that is who you are, and that's how you've been made. It is. And they used. We know that they, took advice from Stonewall and various other organisations, or certainly Stonewall employees in writing this guidance and so on. They're very, very influenced by it. It was basically promoting LGBT ideology, very, very clearly. This concept of a trans pupil who could even be as young as 4 years old is absolutely ridiculous and awful and a terrible lie. And the harm it's doing to not just those people who actually do transition, but their children around them as well, is really untold. And, what did Jesus say about people who lead little ones astray? This will be applied to them, no question.
And here, what I want to do is shout out to Steve Bigu, our head of education at Christian Concern. And I want to say, what are we seeking to do in response to this in many ways? We're saying that we want Christian parents, Christian teachers, our Christian children. We want to say that we are here for you. We want to say to you that we're here to navigate this Don't leave your children in places that are dangerous. Come to us. We're here. Let's start a countercultural movement. Let's start new schools, or let's set the culture in the schools that currently exist. Let's have the courage to challenge these policies. Let's do it for the name of Christ. Let's do it for the safety and the security of our children. Let's do this, because the message of Christ, the purpose of a Christian school, the purpose of a Church of England school is to point our children to the joy and beauty that is found in Christ. And when we see the schools that have become such dark places of kind of cultural propaganda captured by the culture, where in fact our Church of England schools are worse in the culture than the state is, even in a sense, in terms of the guidance, then we need to be saying, the Christian Concern movement needs to say, well, here's how something might be different. Here are places that are safe to educate your children. Let's, and also let's always remember, because again, it's this kind of thing that we quite often talk about at Christian Concern, but we are so much products of our time and our culture that all of us, the Christians included, we think when the children are 2 or 3, they go to nursery, and then when they're 4, they go to primary school, as if the state is responsible for the education of our children. And I think a message that I've become increasingly passionate about is, mums and dads, those children, God, they're your beautiful, miraculous gift, and you're the ones that He has given them to you to raise. And you are the ones that are to educate them. And then I say to the church, and all the children that are in the church, this is our community. Let's raise them up to know who they are, to be secure in this world, and to love Jesus. And within that context, we then have to consider, so how do we school them? But we can't just we can't just say, okay, it's 4. The state says they have to go to school, and then you put them into a school that has gender-affirming policies. How can that be good?
So, yeah.
It's the government are consulting at the moment on their draft guidance, which is a significant improvement on what it could be. There are definitely areas within the guidance that can be tightened up. We've published guidance on how to respond to the consultation, which has been posted in the comments there. So please do make sure that you respond to that. It'll be interesting to know how the Church of England respond to the consultation, whether they themselves try and do activism to try and water it down to say, well, no, it's too traditional, it's too restrictive of people. Who knows how the Church of England
they might probably call it transphobic, Ben.
yeah, perhaps.
There's a great comment by Donna Ross, I can see. She nails it on the head, Donna Ross. Well done for nailing it on the head.
Donna Rose.
Originally, the church was responsible for education and for looking after widows and others that needed care. Since the state took over, both systems are failing. No, certainly. I think the church, but I think the sad thing though is the Church of England has the influence to influence so many schools, and yet far too often it seems the Church of England schools are the worst ones. So yes, no, Tim, I do agree with you. What they're doing, valuing all God's children, is awful. And I don't want them to, I want them to withdraw it, and I want them to apologize. As in, it's not, I fear it's going to be, okay, now we're just going to revise it in light of this guidance. It should be, we were wrong, it damages children.
Yes.
Let's point towards a better way.
I want to just take up this Christopher McCormack comment that's down here. I know just watching these guys, I presume this is us, get bent out of shape over guidance designed to stop bullying. Oh, it's so funny. Well, Christopher, let me say this. We really don't want any child to be bullied. We care deeply about every single child, and that they're looked after, that they're watched over, that they are cared for. We want to actually help every single child. And if they're in gender confusion, then we say straight up, we're here, we want to help you. We say to the parents that are in that situation, looking after children that are gender confused, we're here, we want to help you. And if you've been subject to bullying, well, we're sorry about that, but we'd love to help you. And we're going to say to any child bullied because of anything, that we are here, that we don't believe in that. We want children to be loved, to be safe, to be secure, and to flourish. And you know what? To run around and play innocently and enjoy life. And
this is the thing, though, Andrea. This is where the Church of England is actually obfuscating it, because it says that this document is about bullying, right? Well, we all agree that bullying is wrong. Full stop. Game over. I don't care what it's about. I don't care what they're bullied for. I don't know what it is. Bullying is wrong. Game over. That's it. But this guidance is about a lot more than that. It's things like, allowing a uniform to be, flexible for trans pupils, and it's things like, making sure that you enable them to, feel themselves and be themselves, and teach transgender issues as fact, and this kind of thing. It's much, much more than just bullying. If only it was just bullying should be stopped. It's not. It's actually talking about the whole transgender ideology and saying, transphobic language is a common form of bullying. Therefore, you can't say anything that might be deemed transphobic, which includes things like we're created male and female from Genesis 1:27. It's much, much more than that. And that Nigel Genders is trying to claim, it's nothing to do with how you should treat gender questioning children. Well, actually, it does say about that, and it's being used to justify that. It has been used to justify that. Been used in court to justify that. And so that is actually what it does do.
Thank you, Tim. That was particularly helpful. I think we're going to wrap up there. Andrea and Tim, thank you so much for joining today, and thank you all for tuning in and posting your comments and your questions. And we look forward to seeing you again next week on Round the Table.
Thanks, Ben.